Okay, so let's start with a question that honestly kind of stopped me in my tracks. What if the real measure of a church's success isn't, how many people are in the seats on Sunday,
Hmm.
but instead how many leaders it actually sends out on Monday?
Yeah, that's the core of it, isn't it? It completely flips the usual script.
It really does. And it forces us to rethink why we even gather in the first place.
Exactly. So, for this deep dive, we're really focusing on moving beyond just being a church, like an institution focused inward, to becoming more like a movement.
The movement, okay.
Yeah, and that takes a huge mindset shift. It's thinking generationally, moving away from building, let's say, a monument, something impressive but static, maybe dependent on one set of
Right,
leaders.
something that looks good now.
Exactly, towards becoming more like a seedbed, something organic designed to multiply leaders, ministries, new movements that keep rippling outwards long after the first generation is gone.
And the sources we've looked at for today, they're not just like abstract ideas. It feels more like a practical blueprint for making that happen, for achieving that multiplication.
That's the goal.
So for you listening, the aim is to walk away with a clear picture of how to embrace this generational thinking. And importantly, how to dodge what the sources call institutional comfort.
Oh, absolutely. And we need to define that term institutional comfort right up front because it's sort of the silent killer of multiplication.
Okay, what is it then?
It's that feeling of security you get, predictable budgets, solid staff structures, a really polished Sunday service. It feels safe. It even feels successful.
Yeah, comfortable. Yeah.
Right. But those very structures, that very comfort, can actually end up stifling the outward movement. It stops you taking the risks needed to, well, send your best people away.
Okay, so let's dig into that shift in mindset first.
Yeah.
If the goal is becoming a movement, not just a monument, the sources are pretty clear. The focus has to move away from just counting heads, attendance,
Mm-hmm. How many people are inside the walls?
towards multiplication. How many lives, how many leaders are being sent out beyond those walls?
And that means you have to kind of throw away the old scoreboard. It's tough.
Yeah.
The sources highlight this basic dilemma. Lots of organizations, maybe most, they grow, they get bigger, but very, very few actually multiply.
What's the difference there, really? Growth versus multiplication.
Well, growth is just getting bigger in one spot, adding more seats, bigger budget. Multiplication is about creating new, self-sustaining, independent works, things that can thrive without you, without the founder, without the home base, constantly propping them up.
Okay, that requires letting go.
A lot of letting go. It's a deliberate, sometimes pretty painful shift, moving from like protecting your control to actively releasing capacity and shifting from just maintaining what you have to focusing everything on the mission, even if it feels risky.
And interestingly, the model for this isn't some new business trend.
No, not at all.
It's ancient. The sources point us straight to the church at Antioch, back in the book of Acts. They didn't just grow. They became this incredible sending hub.
Yeah, a launch pad. I mean, they sent out Paul and Barnabas. That basically catalyzed the whole mission across the Mediterranean.
So Antioch is the blueprint we need to unpack.
Definitely. And what's so striking, the sources really emphasize this. Antioch's success wasn't because they were huge or had some complex 5-year strategic plan.
It wasn't strategy.
Not in the way we think of it. It was more about their structural simplicity and this, frankly, aggressive commitment to empowering and releasing leaders.
Okay.
If you look at what made them so catalytic, some of their practices are still really countercultural today.
Like what? What stands out?
Well, first off, context matters. Antioch was this major trade city, incredibly multicultural.
A real crossroads.
Exactly. So right from the start, it was like a living lab for cross-cultural gospel work. They weren't a homogenous group. They were already figuring out how to operate across different languages and cultures. That naturally prepared them for sending people out globally.
That makes sense. It wasn't an add-on later.
No, it was in their DNA from the beginning. And second, look at how they made huge decisions. Like sending out Barnabas and Saul, arguably their two most gifted, most crucial leaders.
Yeah, that's the big one.
It wasn't a management team meeting with spreadsheets. The decision came out of intense periods of worship, fasting, and listening together for the Spirit's guidance, communal discernment.
Worship, fasting, communal discernment.
Yeah. That made the sending feel like a sacred duty, an act of obedience, not just a strategic calculation about who they could afford to lose.
Okay, but let me push on that a bit because that's where it gets tricky for leaders today, right?
Yeah.
We have budgets, HR constraints, strategic plans, board meetings. How do you actually mesh that modern reality with, fasting and discernment? Do the sources give any clues on bridging that gap?
That's a great question, and it really hits the tension point. The sources seem to suggest that the administration, the structure, it has to serve the discerned mission, not drive it.
Okay.
Leadership has to trust a mission more than it trusts the org chart or the budget predictability. For Antioch, their conviction about the call on Barnabas and Saul was apparently so strong.
It overrode the practical worry.
It seems so. The logistical questions like who's going to lead this group now, who's going to teach, where's the funding, those became secondary to the primary mission mandate. It required enormous institutional faith, a willingness to operate with maybe a perceived deficit for the sake of multiplication.
Wow, okay. And that leads right into the third practice you mentioned, which is maybe the hardest for any leader, any CEO, any senior pastor to actually do.
It's tough.
They were willing to release their best, their absolute top talent, Paul and Barnabas,
Oh.
to prioritize multiplying over just accumulating talent in one place.
I mean, seriously, you lose those too. You're losing your best speaker, your best theologian, your best organizer, all in one go. Doesn't that look like organizational suicide?
From a purely institutional bottom line perspective, yeah, it looks crazy, which is exactly why most organizations choose accumulation instead. They build everything around keeping the star players.
The celebrity pastor, the key manager.
Right, they create a celebrity-centric culture, but Antioch's choice, by sending them out, actually avoided that trap. Their core value wasn't tied up in the personality.
It was in the process.
Yes, in the reproducible process and the underlying mission. They seemed to trust that because they were a seedbed, the next wave of leaders was already growing, ready to step up.
Okay, and there's this really practical, almost tangible piece the sources highlight, the ritualized sending. They didn't just, let Paul and Barnabas walk out the door.
No, it wasn't casual.
They commissioned them formally. Prayer, laying on of hands, making it public. What's the significance of that ritual? How does that translate today?
It's huge, relationally and symbolically. It needs to be public, feel formal, and carry the weight of the whole organization's blessing.
Why? What does that do?
Well, for one, it prevents the leader who's leaving from feeling like they're being pushed out or just changing jobs. It frames the departure as sacred, as missional, as relational, not just a transaction, or worse, a dismissal.
Okay, so how would that look now?
In a modern setting, it could be a formal commissioning service, maybe a significant financial gift to help launch the new work, perhaps setting up an ongoing coaching or advisory relationship. The sending organization stays connected, invested.
So the senders still feel ownership of the mission of the person they sent.
Exactly. It's not good luck, you're on your own. It's we're sending you and we're with you.
All right, so if Antioch is the model for the sending hub, how do we build the engine inside an organization to actually produce those leaders to send?
Ah, yes. The engine.
The sources seem really clear. It boils down to how leaders are developed. They contrast staff-centered leadership, where people basically manage existing programs,
Keep the machine running.
with reproduction-centered leadership, where a leader's main job is actually to reproduce other leaders.
Yeah, and that takes us right to the core blueprint for this generational thinking. It's fundamentally about apprenticeship. The absolute spine of multiplication, according to the sources, is Paul's charge to Timothy.
Which is?
The things you have heard me say, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. You see it.
Ah, yeah. 4 generations right there in the command.
Exactly. Me to you, you to faithful people, those people to others. It pulls leadership development out of just like the HR training seminar and puts it squarely into relational spiritual apprenticeship.
And to make that apprenticeship work, the sources lay out this really practical 4-stage process. They call it a ladder of empowerment. It's not just about delegating tasks. It's about handing over real authority, real ownership.
That's the key. Real ownership. Stage 1 is simple, modeling. The mentor basically says, I'll do it. You watch me.
Okay. Learning by observing.
Right. The apprentice just soaks it in the skills, the instincts, how decisions get made.
Then stage 2.
Participation. Let's do it together. Now the apprentice starts doing parts of the work, but alongside the mentor. Building confidence, getting immediate feedback.
Makes sense.
Then comes stage 3. This is the crucial pivot point. You do it, I'll watch.
Okay, the mentor steps back.
Right. The apprentice takes the lead. And this is vital. The mentor has to be okay with what the materials call safe failure.
Safe failure. Let's pause there. That sounds like the hardest part for anyone in charge.
Oh, it is.
Because failure can cost time, money, maybe even damage reputation. How does a leader get comfortable with that risk? What does safe actually mean here?
It means the mentor has decided that developing the leader is more important than the perfect execution of the task in that moment. Safe means you've defined the boundaries of acceptable risk beforehand.
So the apprentice knows it's okay to mess up.
Yes, within limits. Mistakes are expected, even encouraged sometimes, because they become these incredible learning labs. They're not grounds for punishment. But here's the catch. If the mentor jumps in too quickly to rescue the situation every time.
They short-circuit the learning.
Exactly. They rob the apprentice of the experience, and worse, they reinforce dependency. If you don't allow for failure at this stage, you're basically committing to what the sources call perpetual holding.
Perpetual holding, meaning the apprentice never really grows up, leadership-wise?
Pretty much. They might become great managers of the existing system because they're always under direct supervision, but they never develop the autonomy, the confidence, the resilience needed to go out and start something new themselves.
Right, because they've never truly owned it, mistakes and all.
Precisely. And it's only after the apprentice proves competence through that period of safe failure, demonstrating they've learned and grown, that they reach the final stage. Stage 4. You do it, now go teach someone else. That's the multiplication mandate fully activated. They're not just doing the job, they're released to start their own chain of reproduction.
And the sources warn about getting this timing wrong, right?
Yes, 2 big pitfalls. Premature release, sending someone out before they're truly ready, before they've been tested, that often leads to burnout or failure.
And the opposite.
Perpetual holding, which we just talked about. Never letting go. The solution they propose is having really clear competency-based readiness markers, objective signs that show someone is ready, and often using a season of co-leadership to transition authority gradually, not just abruptly cutting the cord.
Okay, this whole process, the ladder, the sending, it sounds powerful, but I can imagine a problem. If you send out a newly empowered leader, but the model of ministry they take with them is super complicated.
Dependent on lots of resources.
Right. The new thing is likely to fail, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it won't have the big budget, the specialized staff, the fancy building of the sending church.
That is the perfect setup for talking about the DNA of a movement. You're absolutely right. For this whole process to work, to create things that last and multiply, the movement itself has to be encoded with certain characteristics, a specific DNA.
Okay.
And these core traits are all about radical simplicity. That's what makes it reproducible, sustainable, and scalable, especially in resource-scarce environments.
So the first DNA marker is just that, simplicity.
Bingo. If your core method requires, I don't know, specialized sound equipment, or a huge building, or a team of 6 highly trained specialists, that's a monument model. It's not easily reproducible.
So what does simple look like?
It means methods that are repeatable by ordinary people, not just professionals. Think decentralized things. Simple gatherings in homes, basic community service projects, one-on-one discipleship over coffee. Avoid the big, complex, event-driven programs that need tons of cash or specialized talent to pull off.
Basically, if the new group can't afford it or staff it easily, the model is too complex for multiplication.
You got it. Second DNA marker. Leader empowerment has to be baked into the structure. It can't just be lip service.
Meaning?
If the central office or headquarters holds all the real decision-making power, if every new little group needs permission from the main hub to tweak its budget or adapt its approach to the local context, that kills multiplication instantly.
It creates bottlenecks.
Massive ones. Authority has to be genuinely decentralized. Local leaders need the freedom to act autonomously, to contextualize for their specific community. The role of the central staff then shifts.
From gatekeepers, too.
To coaches, trainers, resource providers, cheerleaders. Their job is to support and encourage the local efforts, not control them.
Okay, simplicity, empowerment. That's the third one.
The third essential strand is gospel centrality. The whole movement has to be anchored unshakably in the core message of the gospel, the non-negotiables.
Why is that so critical for multiplication?
Because it ensures faithfulness over time and across cultures. It guards against drifting towards cultural fads or becoming overly reliant on the charisma of one particular leader. If the core message itself isn't simple, clear, and reproducible, the whole thing can unravel once the founder leaves or the context changes.
Okay, that makes sense. Simplicity, empowerment, gospel centrality. That's the DNA.
And if you combine that DNA with the apprenticeship model we talked about, well, let's make it really concrete for listeners. Let's talk about the math.
The multiplication math.
Yeah. If you just focus on that simple 1-to-3 reproduction ratio, One leader faithfully empowers 3 apprentices, who then each empower 3 more. The compounding effect is where the revolution happens.
Okay, walk us through it. It shows how small, faithful efforts can explode over time, right? Like compound interest.
Exactly. So you start with just one equipped leader committed to reproducing. After one cycle, generation 1, they've trained and released 3 new leaders.
Okay, 1 becomes 3.
Then second cycle, generation 2. Those 3 each reproduce 3. Now you have 9 new leaders.
Okay, 3 times 3.
Third cycle, generation 3. Those 9 each reproduce 3. Suddenly you're at 27 leaders.
It's growing fast now.
And just one more cycle, generation 4. If those 27 reproduce 3 each, you haven't just added people to your original group. You've catalyzed 81 new leaders out there capable of starting their own works, their own multiplication chains.
Wow. 1 becomes 81 in just 4 cycles. That's the difference between addition and multiplication.
That's the power of it. And that is why the sources hammer home the need to change how we measure success. If you're still just counting Sunday attendance and the size of your operating budget.
You're measuring the monument, not the movement. You're rewarding institutional comfort.
Precisely. The metrics have to align with multiplication. So yes, track attendance if you want, but start primarily measuring things like the number of leaders you've trained and actually released,
Okay.
the number of new works, new groups, new house churches planted outside your walls, and maybe the number of disciples who are now leading their own small groups or initiatives.
Those are the vital signs of a movement.
They absolutely are.
Okay, so wrapping this up, as we synthesize everything from this deep dive, the choice seems stark.
Yes.
It's the choice between remaining a local church, which the sources kind of picture as a nice static garden needing constant upkeep,
Requiring maintenance?
or committing to become a reproducing movement, which means shifting your focus to planting gardeners, leaders, equipped and sent out to cultivate new gardens, new works elsewhere.
And that shift, it's deeply personal for every leader, every team. It requires, frankly, a good dose of institutional humility.
Yeah.
You have to ask the hard questions.
Oh.
Are our structures, our budgets, our priorities actually set up to make sending and multiplication easier? Or are they really designed for internal maintenance, for self-preservation, for comfort?
It forces a reevaluation of assets.
Completely. Your most valuable asset isn't the building or the budget line or how slick your program is. It's the leaders you intentionally form, genuinely trust, empower with real authority, and then, crucially, have the courage to send out.
So the final thought, the real takeaway. The ultimate measure of leadership isn't just what you build during your time. It's not how impressive things look right now under your watch.
No. The truest measure is what's still flourishing, what's still multiplying maybe 10, 20 years after you're gone, carried forward by those autonomous, reproducing leaders that you faithfully invested in and had the courage to release.